Let's look at Article 2, Management Rights / Productivity. Two fundamental issues here going on at play. The employer has the right to exercise complete control over much of everything. So it is the right of management to determine the methods and means by which the work is to get done, to arrange schedules, programming, all of that stuff. It is not the union's responsibility for doing that. It is not your responsibility for doing that. However, we do have an obligation to inform the administration or management of when things are not working exactly as they should be, or maybe perhaps things could be done in a better way. And it is the informed manager who listens and takes that into consideration and uses your ideas. Also, the delivery of services to the public should be done in the most efficient, effective, and productive manner. And again, your participation and interplay between your awareness, your work, your activities, and what the administration or what the management of your agency is decided should be done. So let me turn this over to a manager's perspective and look at how things, how this article is looked at from the management side of things.
Okay. Management rights, productivity. There are basically two types of management rights clauses in various contracts. One is the weak management rights clause, which limits the employer to the performance of the usual and customary rights of management. The other is the strong management rights clause, by which management retains complete control over its organization and its operations. The Commonwealth has had a strong management rights clause since the beginning of collective bargaining in the 1970s. However, this does not give management the right to do whatever they want. The first limitation is where the management right is limited by an express provision of the collective bargaining agreement. For example, management cannot discipline an employee without just cause. The second limitation is that the management rights article does not exempt management from the requirements of Chapter 150E, the state collective bargaining law. Management must continue to bargain with the union. This takes two forms. One, negotiation of the terms and conditions of employment, which are contained in the collective bargaining agreement. Two, so-called midterm impact bargaining. For example, if management contemplates a reorganization or a layoff, management must bargain the impact of that decision on the membership with the union. The delivery of services provision is a particularly quirky provision. Management rights permit management wrongs. Incompetence or ineffective management is not grievable. However, as Greg says, the union will intervene to suggest better ways of doing things. And as part of the bilateral relationship, management should receive that and actually welcome it if there are ways that can be approached to do a better job. Management cannot violate the collective bargaining agreement in carrying out its organization and operations. This is always grievable. For example, management cannot require employees to work additional hours to meet work requirements without paying overtime. To give some credit to this provision, it does recognize management and labor as equal partners in the delivery of services. So when the union has something to say about the delivery of services, management should listen. The management rights article also has a so-called zipper clause, which states that the collective bargaining agreement constitutes the total understanding between the parties. Once again, this is an overreach, and management is subject to Chapter 150E, the collective bargaining law, which requires midterm bargaining when management makes a decision which affects the terms and conditions of employment already negotiated. Based on my 40 years of experience representing management, I can say that managers are not evil people. They, for the most part, are not familiar with the collective bargaining agreement. That's a great gap in management. They are under the gun trying to accomplish their mission and achieve their objectives. A direct appeal to management labor relations staff more often than not can resolve workplace disputes because management is operating in its own particular sphere without a full understanding of labor relations. So it's important to keep up the dialogue with the union representatives here and with the labor relations people over issues in the enforcement of management rights.
Good advice, and I concur. Richard, from a legal perspective, Article 2, managerial
Sure.
rights?
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add to what David had to say regarding the management rights clause, but I can add from one personal experience when I was working in a state agency myself. My own supervisor, as David suggested might occur, didn't really understand how public sector labor relations worked. He stated at one point that if the collective bargaining agreement doesn't forbid something, then the management can do it. Well, that's not necessarily so, because if the management decides they want to make a change in the workplace that affects the terms and conditions of employment, they have to bargain that, because that's a matter of what's called impact bargaining. Management can't just go willy-nilly making changes here and there without dealing with the union to the extent that these changes have an effect on the existing terms and conditions of employment. And that's true even though there is what David referred to as a zipper clause in the contract. But the other thing that's important for union folks to recognize is that the management does have what's called control of the enterprise. That is, the management gets to decide in a very broad way what it's going to do and how it's going to do it. For example, here in Massachusetts, we're about to have a sales tax holiday in the coming weekend. The Department of Revenue has a number of employees whom NATE represents who administer the Massachusetts state sales tax. However, the union has absolutely no voice in whether or not Massachusetts is going to have a sales tax holiday. That is, the union can't demand to bargain over whether or not there's a sales tax holiday in the month of August. That's set by the executive branch and by the legislature. We don't get to bargain over that. And that's the way it is. Unfortunately, sometimes the management's ability to make decisions can lead to bad results. For example, many years ago, some of you may remember that the Ford Motor Company put out a car called the Edsel. The United Auto Workers had absolutely no voice in whether or not the Ford Motor Company put out a car called the Edsel, which, as some of you may recall, was a complete and total flop. The union has no voice and no ability in situations like that to protect the management from its own mistakes. Where the union can step in is when the management does something that affects terms and conditions of employment in a direct way. In that situation, the union can and has a duty to step in, demand to bargain with the employer to make sure that these proposed changes don't have an adverse effect on the employee's rights in the workplace.
Thank you, Richard. And in Massachusetts, we do not promote the making of Edsels.